The colony of Avaris Prime hung like a small jewel on the edge of the Andara sector, surrounded by strange purple clouds of gas that shimmered in the artificial light of orbiting satellites. For most inhabitants, life was a careful balance of survival and work. Humans were a minority here, living among alien races who had explored the stars for centuries. The human colonists had built a small settlement, a cluster of metal structures and domes. But beyond the colony, the wilderness of the planet stretched endlessly untamed, dangerous, and full of life forms no one fully understood. Dr. Alara Venn strode through the early morning mist, her boots crunching on the frost-touched soil. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied life forms from other worlds. But today, her work felt less scientific and more urgent. Reports had come in about a human living alone somewhere in the untamed forests beyond the colony, not just surviving, but thriving. Some called him a savage, a word that carried fear and suspicion in every corner of the settlement. Alara's curiosity had driven her here, but so had a sense of justice. No human should be left to suffer simply because they did not fit the neat boxes society created. As she moved deeper into the misty forest, the alien plants brushed against her arms, soft but oddly metallic. The air smelled of wet soil and something sharper, almost electric. Every step reminded her that out here, humans were far from the safety of walls and rules. Then she saw him. He was crouched by a stream, dipping his hands into the water. His dark hair was long and tangled, falling in front of his face. His skin was tanned and marked by small scars that told a story of survival. His eyes, though, were the thing that caught her. First they were intelligent, alert, and unafraid. For a moment, Alara felt a chill. Not from the cold, but from the realization that this human was unlike anyone she had ever met. A rustle behind her made her spin. Colony security had followed her, their uniforms bright against the muted forest colors. They carried tranquilizer rifles and wore expressions of concern, mixed with irritation. "There he is," one of the officers said. "The savage. We need to detain him before he harms anyone or himself." Alara stepped forward quickly, her arms raised. "Don't touch him, I'll take him." Her voice rang through the trees, loud and firm, leaving no room for argument. The officers hesitated, startled by her sudden declaration. "This is dangerous," one said. "We can't just let him roam. He's untrained, unregulated, he could be a threat." Alara's eyes locked onto the man at the stream. He had noticed the commotion but did not flee. Instead, he stood slowly, his posture calm, almost regal despite his wild appearance. "He's not a threat," she said, her voice steady. "I see a man worth protecting." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. "Dr. Venn," one said, "this isn't protocol. You can't just—" "I can and I will," Alara interrupted. She took a step closer to the man, her presence protective and deliberate. "If anyone is to decide what happens to him, it will be me. Not fear, not suspicion. Me." For a moment, there was silence. Even the forest seemed to pause, as if listening. Then the man, Kale, she would soon learn his name, took a tentative step forward. He studied her carefully, his gaze calculating. There was caution there, yes, but also recognition, as though he sensed that she would not betray him. Alara smiled faintly, a small sign of encouragement. "It's okay," she said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to understand. I want to help." The officers muttered under their breath, unsure how to respond. Finally, one lowered his rifle slightly. "If you're going to take responsibility, Doctor, that's your choice," he said, though his tone made it clear he did not fully approve. Kale's expression softened slightly. He nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and turned back to the stream. He knelt again, dipping his hands into the cold water. For the first time, he allowed himself to relax in her presence. Alara crouched a few feet away, careful not to invade his space. She pulled out a small notebook and pen, her tools of observation. "My name is Alara," she said gently. "I study life forms. I study how they survive, and I think you have something important to teach me." Kale looked at her but did not speak. Words, it seemed, were secondary here. His communication came through his eyes, his subtle gestures, the way he moved in the world around him. Hours passed. Elara watched him fish for small creatures in the stream, move with surprising grace through the underbrush, and react to the sounds of the forest with alert sensitivity. The more she observed, the more she understood why the colony had feared him, and why that fear was misplaced. He was not dangerous in the way they imagined. He was different, yes, but not in a way that should inspire panic. His difference was strength, intelligence, and adaptability. As dusk fell, the forest glowed with alien bioluminescence. Elara finally spoke, breaking the comfortable silence. "Kale, you must come with me. You can't stay out here forever. It's not safe." He hesitated. The world he knew was outside the colony, where he had learned to survive and navigate the wilderness. But he also sensed her sincerity. Slowly, deliberately, he nodded. Elara allowed herself a small sigh of relief. "Thank you," she said. "I promise, I will protect you. And together, maybe we can show them that being human doesn't mean being predictable or tame." The walk back to the colony was cautious. Kale moved silently beside her, listening and observing, curious about the strange machines and lights that lined the path. Other humans peeked from windows and doors, whispering and pointing. But Elara ignored them. For now, nothing mattered except the human she had promised to protect. By the time they reached the colony gates, word had spread. Security and administrators watched from a distance, uncertain and tense. Elara raised her voice so everyone could hear. "He is human, just like us. He deserves our protection, not our fear. And I will see to it that he has both." There was a murmur among the crowd, a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. Some shook their heads, unwilling to believe. Others felt a flicker of hope, inspired by her courage. But Kale remained silent, simply standing beside her, his gaze steady and thoughtful. Later, in the small quarters the colony had reluctantly offered, Elara began the process of learning more about him. She observed his habits, his way of thinking, and his reactions to new things. Kale was unlike anyone she had ever met. His instincts were sharp, his senses acute, and his mind adaptable in ways that seemed almost superhuman. Despite his wild exterior, he understood kindness. He responded to patience. He could learn. And in that realization, Elara felt a spark of hope not just for him, but for humanity as a whole. Somewhere deep inside the forest, the night sounds continued, a symphony of alien creatures and shifting leaves. But in the small room, Kale and Elara shared a quiet understanding, one that would grow into trust, then partnership, then something that could challenge the entire colony's assumptions about what humans were capable of. And for the first time since she had arrived on Avaris Prime, Elara allowed herself to imagine a future where fear did not define them, and where humans, even labeled savages, could shine in ways others could never predict. The morning sun spilled over Avaris Prime, painting the colony in warm shades of orange and gold. Elara moved quietly through the corridors, careful not to draw attention. Kale followed at a measured pace, his tall frame almost blending with the shadows. He had spent the night observing the colony from their small quarters, learning more about its rhythms and routines. Even in sleep, his senses had remained alert, listening to the distant hum of machinery and the occasional chatter of passing humans. Elara had expected resistance, or fear, or even rebellion. But Kale's calmness surprised her. He did not speak much, but his eyes told her everything she needed to know: curiosity, caution, and an instinctive understanding of the world. He watched humans like an alien species studying another, noting habits, gestures, and small patterns that most overlooked. "Today," Elara said softly, "we start understanding each other. You, me, and them." She gestured toward the colony outside. "If you want to survive here, you must learn, and I must learn from you." Kale tilted his head, studying her words. Slowly, he nodded. It was not a gesture of submission, but of recognition. Their first stop was the colony's main laboratory. It was filled with strange machines, humming softly. Screens displaying data streams, and containers holding samples from the planet's forests, streams, and skies. Kale approached them cautiously, his fingers brushing the surfaces as if testing their texture, their meaning. "This is where I work," Ilara explained. "Everything here is a way to study life. But it's not just about plants or animals. I want to understand you too. How you survived out there. What you can teach us." Ever. Kale's dark eyes scanned the room. He crouched by a containment unit holding a small, glowing creature, a native species with iridescent wings. With a gentle touch, he coaxed it closer. The creature did not resist, responding to his calm presence. Ilara's breath caught. Humans had always been considered weak in comparison to the alien species here. But Kale's control over fear, both in himself and in others, was extraordinary. "See?" she said softly. "You understand things instinctively. You adapt. That's what humans are capable of, even if most of them forget it." Kale made a low sound, almost like a murmur, and repeated a small gesture he had seen Ilara do, earlier tracing lines in the air to describe movement or flow. It was a language of motion. Unspoken, but clear. Ilara smiled. Communication did not always require words. Over the next several days, Ilara began a careful routine. She taught Kyle the basics of the colony's systems. How to interact with machines, how to communicate with other humans without causing alarm, and how to navigate the settlement safely. In return, Kale shared lessons that were beyond any textbook. He showed her shortcuts through the forest, ways to detect changes in the weather by watching the plants, and how to read the subtle signs of danger from creatures no one else noticed. Ilara realized something remarkable. Kale's savage nature was not weakness. It was evolution. He had learned to survive in ways no structured education could teach. His mind worked with instinct and observation, forming solutions faster than any machine. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Ilara led Kale to the training grounds near the colony's edge. A group of children watched from a distance, whispering about the wild man. Some pointed, some laughed, others were simply curious. Ilara ignored the stares. Today, Kale would learn more about himself and the humans around him. "Kale," she said, "do you see those children?" He looked, his expression unreadable. "They are human too, like you. They live in safety, protected by rules. But you have something they do not. Strength, awareness, and instinct. That makes you valuable. That makes you human in a way few understand." He studied the children, then her. Slowly, he began to mimic the way they moved, their gestures, their careful steps. He did not imitate to mock. He was learning. Ilara's heart swelled. Here was proof that humans, even labeled savages, could adapt to civilization without losing their uniqueness. But Kale's education was not without challenge. Some colonists could not see past the fear of difference. Rumors spread that he was dangerous, unpredictable, a threat to the carefully maintained order. One morning, Ilara overheard a conversation in the mess hall. "He's a savage," one colonist whispered. "He doesn't belong here. What if he attacks someone?" Another shook her head. "Dr. Venn is protecting him for some reason. But what if she's wrong?" Ilara clenched her fists. Protecting Kale was no longer just a matter of curiosity, it was a matter of principle. She could not allow ignorance or fear to define what humans were capable of. That evening, she returned to Kale's quarters, where he was observing a mechanical puzzle she had brought for him. The small device had moving parts, requiring careful thought and manipulation. Kale studied it, touched it, turned it over in his hands, and within minutes, he had solved it. Ilara's eyes widened. "That's incredible. she said. "You solved it faster than anyone I've ever seen. You see solutions in ways I never imagined." Kale looked at her. It was a look that conveyed understanding without words. He understood her admiration, and perhaps even her pride. But there was also caution in his gaze. He had survived alone for so long that trust did not come easily. Days turned into weeks. Ilara and Kale's bond grew stronger. She learned that he had a remarkable memory, recalling details from the forest and the colony with precise accuracy. He could sense changes in the environment, a subtle shift in temperature, a faint sound in the distance, and react with instinctive precision. The colonists began to notice small things. Doors left open, machinery left running, or misplaced tools, but Kale never made a mistake. One afternoon, the colony's communications officer, a tall alien with shimmering blue skin, visited Ilara's lab. "We've been monitoring Kale," he said, his voice calm but serious. "Your observations are unusual. He shows capabilities beyond normal human parameters." Ilara smiled, a mix of pride and defiance. "He's not abnormal. He's human. He's what humanity can be if we listen to instinct, adaptability, and courage. He has survived where others would fail, and he is teaching us what survival truly means." The alien studied her for a moment. "Your definition of humanity is unique." "Not unique," Ilara replied firmly. "Realistic. Humans are not weak. They are adaptable, curious, clever, brave. And sometimes, the most valuable humans are the ones you least expect." Kale, who had been silently observing the exchange, tilted his head. Though he did not speak, his presence was a quiet assertion. He understood her, and he trusted her. But trust would soon be tested. That night, while the colony slept, a strange vibration ran through the settlement. Machines whirred unexpectedly, and the lights flickered. Ilara was immediately alert. Kale, sensing the disturbance instinctively, moved beside her. Together, they stepped outside. In the distance, a faint glow marked the approach of something unusual, a scouting drone from the neighboring system, designed for resource collection but malfunctioning, now wandering dangerously close to the colony. Ilara frowned. "This could be bad," she said quietly. "If it reaches the main dome," Kale's eyes narrowed. Without hesitation, he began analyzing the terrain, noting the drone's speed, trajectory, and potential vulnerabilities. He moved with a precision that amazed Ilara, recalling every shortcut, every high ground, and every obstacle from their previous walks. Ilara realized then that Kyle was more than a survivor. He was a protector. He could sense threats, adapt, and act faster than any structured protocol could allow. As they approached the drone, Ilara whispered, "Be careful. We don't want it damaged. It's dangerous, but it's also part of their system." Kyle nodded. With careful, deliberate movements, he directed the drone away from the colony, guiding it toward a safe clearing where it could be neutralized without harm. The drone, responding to Kale's subtle manipulations, obeyed with surprising precision. By dawn, the threat had passed. The colony slept, unaware of the crisis that had been averted. Ilara looked at Kale, awe and gratitude mingling in her chest. "You see what I mean?" she said softly. "You're remarkable. They called you a savage, but you just saved lives without even trying to prove anything." "I get." Kale's expression was unreadable, but Ilara knew he understood. The colony's labels meant nothing compared to instinct, intelligence, and courage. He had proven that humans could excel in ways others could not imagine. That night, as Ilara documented the events in her journal, she reflected on the journey ahead. Kale had survived the wild, adapted to civilization, and shown extraordinary abilities that challenged the colony's perceptions. But this was only the beginning. Together, they would learn from each other, face new challenges, and continue to prove that humanity, even in its rawest, most untamed form, was a force to be respected. And somewhere deep inside the forest, the stars shone brightly, watching over the colony, and the human who refused to be defined by fear, labels, or limitations. The colony of Avaris Prime had grown accustomed to Kale's presence, though whispers still followed him wherever he went. Some colonists watched from windows, unsure what to make of the savage living among them. But Dr. Ilara Venn had grown more certain with each passing day. Kale was extraordinary. Not dangerous, not chaotic, but extraordinary. That certainty would soon be put to the test. It began with a subtle change in the colony's atmosphere. Machines hummed louder than usual. The environmental sensors flickered, and the colony's communications array reported strange interference. At first, the administrators thought it was a technical glitch, but when the external defense drone's automated machines designed to patrol the perimeter began malfunctioning, panic quietly spread. Ilara noticed it first. She had been monitoring KL while he moved among the workshop equipment, adjusting and observing with an uncanny focus. The moment she saw his eyes narrow at the flashing lights on the control panel, she knew. He had already noticed the problem. "Kale," she said gently, drawing closer. "Something is wrong. I think the drones are out of control." Kale tilted his head, studying the monitors, the patterns, and the irregularities in the signals. With a quiet murmur, almost like thought itself, he began pointing, touching, and adjusting small panels, not unlike someone solving a puzzle. Ilara watched in awe. No one in the colony had moved so quickly or so efficiently, not even the technical officers trained for years. "Their programming, it's unstable," she said softly, trying to translate his movements into words. "It's like they're following rules that no longer make sense. If we don't intervene, they could damage the colony." Kale paused, then walked briskly toward the exit. He moved with a confidence that suggested he had already planned a route. Ilara hurried after him. Together, they moved toward the external drone control station, the wind whipping around them, carrying the scents of alien flora. As they arrived, several malfunctioning drones were circling the area, moving unpredictably. Each drone's metallic limbs whirred, their lights blinking erratically. Security personnel had gathered, weapons drawn, unsure of how to respond. "Step back," one shouted. "We can handle this." Ilara shook her head. "No, not like this. Kale can guide them safely. Watch and learn." Kale crouched, examining the first drone. With delicate, precise gestures, he manipulated the control panel nearby. The drone hesitated, almost as if considering his instructions. Then, gradually, it moved away from the colony, toward a safe clearing. Ilara's heart pounded. This was incredible. The colony had feared him, labeled him a savage. Yet here he was, controlling machines that were far more complex than most humans could understand. His instincts, honed by survival in the wild, allowed him to see patterns that no one else could. One of the administrators, an alien with deep green scales, stepped forward, voice trembling with disbelief. How? How is he doing that? These drones are programmed beyond human comprehension." Ilara smiled faintly. "Not beyond humans," she said, "just beyond humans who rely solely on training. Kyle thinks differently. He adapts. He sees what works and acts. That is human strength. Our ability to adjust and survive, no matter the circumstances." But Kale's work was not yet done. Several drones were still malfunctioning, their erratic movements putting nearby structures at risk. Ilara watched as he moved among them, guiding them with subtle motions and quick adjustments, his mind calculating trajectories, timing, and balance with precision. Time seemed to slow. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the colony. Residents and security personnel watched silently, astonished. Here was the savage they had feared leading them through a crisis with clarity, courage, and unmatched skill. Finally, with a last careful maneuver, KL guided the final drone to a secure area. It powered down, blinking once before shutting off completely. Silence followed. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a cheer rose from the few colonists who had witnessed the event. "He did it!" someone shouted. "He saved the colony!" Alara stepped forward, placing a hand on Kale's shoulder. "See?" she said softly. "You've proven them wrong, Kale. Not because I said so, but because of what you did. You are more than they expected. You are human." Kale looked at her, his expression unreadable, but a faint flicker of understanding passed through his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, that he had found a place where he belonged not just among humans, but among those who could see his worth. The aftermath was a mixture of awe and hesitation. Some colonists approached him cautiously, asking questions. Others avoided him, still unsure how to reconcile fear with gratitude, but Alara stood proudly by his side. She knew that fear was easier than understanding, and labels were easier than seeing truth. Yet, through his actions, Kale had begun to change minds. Over the next few days, Kale's reputation shifted subtly. Where once he had been whispered about as a savage, he was now called a protector, a human who could face danger with intelligence and courage. Yet, even as admiration grew, Kale remained humble. He did not seek praise. He simply observed, learned, and acted when necessary. Alara continued their lessons, teaching him the colony's systems, schedules, and human customs. Kale absorbed everything like a sponge, but he also contributed his own knowledge. He demonstrated ways to conserve energy, predict weather changes, and even optimize the colony's agricultural systems using his understanding of natural patterns. One afternoon, while they were walking near the colony's edge, Alara asked a question that had been on her mind for some time. "Kale, do you ever wish you had stayed in the wild? Alone? Without humans? Without rules?" Kale paused. He looked toward the forest, then back at the settlement. Finally, he replied, in a quiet, measured tone, "I survived there. But I never learned. I never understood. Here, I see what humans can do together. I see possibilities." Alara smiled. "That's it exactly. Humanity is not just about surviving. It's about growing, learning, and helping each other. That's why you are important. Not just to me, but to all of us." Kale considered her words, then nodded. He may not have fully understood society's rules, but he understood trust, respect, and value concepts that could not be taught in a classroom. That evening, the colony held a small meeting to discuss the recent drone malfunction. Kale was invited to attend, though many colonists watched from a distance, wary of the so-called savage. As the meeting began, the technical officers detailed the incident. Charts, diagrams, and graphs attempted to explain the drone's erratic behavior. When it came time to discuss solutions, Kale stepped forward. With careful gestures and pointed observations, he identified the root cause, a misalignment in the central processor's timing sequence, which caused a cascading failure in the drone's logic circuits. Alara translated his movements and expressions into words for the assembly. The room fell silent. Then, murmurs of astonishment rippled through the crowd. The colony's technical officers, even the experienced ones, had not noticed this flaw. Kale had solved it instinctively, using reasoning honed by survival and observation. One administrator, still skeptical, finally spoke. "It seems we underestimated him. This human has insight we could not expect." Alara's smile widened. "No, you did not underestimate him. You underestimated what humans are capable of when they are allowed to think, adapt, and act freely. Kale is proof that survival alone does not define us. Our intelligence, courage, and resourcefulness do." By the end of the meeting, Kale's actions had begun to reshape the colony's perception. Fear was replaced by cautious admiration, suspicion replaced by respect, and though some still whispered about his wild past, they could not deny the truth. He had proven himself. As night fell, Alara and Kale stood together on a small observation deck overlooking the colony. Lights twinkled below, machines hummed, and the distant stars shone brightly. "You see, Kale," Alara said softly, "this is only the beginning. You faced your first real test here, and you succeeded. But there will be more challenges, dangers, things you cannot predict. And yet, you will thrive. Kale gazed at her, then at the colony below. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel something like belonging. He had survived alone for so long, but now he understood that strength was not just about enduring, it was about trusting, learning, and acting for something greater than oneself. Alara placed a hand on his shoulder. "The world may call you a savage," she said quietly. "But I know the truth. You are more than that. You are human at your best." Kale's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. In that quiet moment, a bond was cemented. Trust, respect, and shared purpose. Together, they had faced danger, solved a crisis, and begun to change the minds of those around them. And as the stars blinked overhead, both knew this was only the beginning of a journey that would test not only Kale's abilities but humanity's potential itself. The colony of Avaris Prime was changing. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the whispers about Kale shifted. No longer was he simply the savage, a human to fear and avoid. He had proven his intelligence, his courage, and his unique abilities in the face of the drone malfunction. Now, some colonists began to see him as a protector, a human capable of extraordinary things. Dr. Alara Venn walked beside Kale as he inspected the outer fences of the colony. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the ground, highlighting the wild strength in his tall frame. He moved with quiet confidence, eyes scanning for imperfections in the fence or signs of weakness. Alara had long since realized that his instincts went far beyond survival. They were tools of understanding, observation, and foresight. "Kale," she said softly, "they are starting to notice. You've earned their attention, their respect, but not everyone will accept it easily." He tilted his head, listening. His voice was calm and deliberate when he finally spoke. "Some will always fear what they cannot control." Alara nodded. "True. But actions speak louder than fear. You've shown them that strength isn't just physical. It's intelligence, courage, and the ability to adapt. That is what makes humans remarkable." Their patrol took them past the central square, where children played among the alien flora planted by the colony's biologists. Some of the children paused, staring at Kale with curiosity rather than fear. Slowly, one of them approached him. "Are you really human?" the child asked. Wide-eyed, Kale knelt slightly, studying the small human carefully. Then he extended a hand, not in threat, but in simple acknowledgement. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am human." The child smiled and scampered back to the others, telling tales of the big man who saves machines and watches the stars. For Kale, it was a small, almost insignificant moment, but Alara saw it as monumental. Fear was being replaced by trust, even among the youngest in the colony. Over the next few days, the administrators called meetings to discuss the future of Kale's role. Some were still skeptical, uncomfortable with a human who had lived outside society for so long. Others had witnessed his abilities firsthand and argued passionately for recognition. Alara stood in the center of one meeting, facing the council of colonists and alien officials. "Kale has proven himself," she said, voice calm but firm. "He saved lives. He understood systems that even trained experts could not. He has taught us something important, that humanity is adaptable, resourceful, and courageous. He is not a threat. He is a gift." Murmurs spread through the room. One of the older administrators, a human who had lived in the colony for decades, spoke up. "I was wrong about him," he admitted. "I saw only a wild man. Now I see a human capable of things we cannot imagine. Perhaps we should trust him, as we trust each other." KL stood silently beside Alara, observing the discussion. He did not seek approval, but he understood the significance of their words. For the first time, his presence in the colony was acknowledged not as a curiosity, not as a danger, but as a valuable member of the community. The recognition brought new opportunities. Kale began to assist in the colony's daily operations, teaching humans and aliens alike lessons learned from his time surviving in the wild. He showed engineers more efficient ways to maintain machinery, demonstrated to farmers how to detect subtle changes in plant health, and helped children understand how to observe and respect the environment around them. But with recognition came new challenges. Not everyone accepted change easily. Some colonists still whispered behind closed doors, suspicious of Kale's motives, fearful of his untamed instincts. Alara knew that trust would take time to build fully, and she was determined to help Kale navigate this. One evening, as the colony prepared for a festival to celebrate the arrival of a new supply ship, Kale and Alara walked through the bustling square. Music and laughter filled the air. Humans and aliens mingled, sharing food, stories, and smiles. It was a rare moment of unity, and Alara hoped it would help solidify Kale's place among them. "Kale," she said, "tonight is important. People are watching, learning to trust you. Remember, you don't need to prove yourself. Just be yourself. They will follow your example if they see it clearly." Kale nodded. He moved among the crowd, helping a fallen child, offering guidance to a confused engineer, and quietly correcting a malfunctioning light display. Each act was small, but cumulatively, it reinforced the idea that he was not a threat. He was a human who understood the world around him, who could act when needed, and who cared for others. The highlight of the festival came when the supply ship docked. Alarms rang briefly, signaling the arrival of the cargo. The docking procedure was delicate, and any miscalculation could cause damage to the colony or the ship. Without hesitation, Kale stepped forward. He studied the docking sequence, observing the alignment and timing. With precise movements, he guided the automated controls, adjusting speed and trajectory. The ship docked flawlessly, earning gasps and applause from the crowd. Kale's reputation shifted yet again from protector to hero. Later, as the crowd dispersed and the square emptied, Alara and Kale walked to a quiet corner. "You've done well today," she said. "They see you now, not as a savage, but as someone they can rely on. You are beginning to change their understanding of humans." Kale remained silent for a moment, considering her words. Then he said, quietly, "They are learning. Slowly. But they will remember." Alara smiled. "That's all we can hope for. Change takes time. But your actions speak louder than words. You've shown them that humanity is more than labels, more than fear. You've shown them what humans are capable of." As night fell, Kale stood alone on a balcony overlooking the colony. The lights below glimmered like stars, reflecting the efforts and growth of those living within them. He had survived the wilderness, adapted to the colony, and earned the beginning of trust. Yet he knew his journey was far from over. There were still challenges to face, lessons to teach, and doubts to overcome. In the days that followed, Kale's influence became increasingly clear. The colony began to adopt some of his methods, simpler, more intuitive approaches to problem-solving, inspired by his instinctive understanding of patterns. Even the children learned from him, practicing observation and patience as he had taught them. The turning point came when the colony faced a sudden environmental challenge. A fierce storm, unusual for Avaris Prime, swept through the outer regions. Flooding threatened the farms, and the alien creatures that aided in agriculture became distressed. Panic began to spread among the colonists. Kale stepped forward without hesitation. He moved to the affected areas, guiding humans to secure equipment, helping creatures to safe zones, and using his understanding of terrain and weather patterns to predict the storm's movements. Alara followed, assisting him, amazed at how seamlessly he adapted to the crisis. By the time the storm passed, damage was minimal. The colony had survived not only because of technology, but because of Kale's insight and guidance. Administrators, engineers, and farmers alike were forced to acknowledge the truth. Humans, even those who seemed untamed or unconventional, could provide solutions beyond what any protocol or training could achieve. The recognition that Kale had earned was no longer tentative. He was becoming a symbol of human potential, a living example that courage, intelligence, and adaptability were not abstract traits, but tangible strengths that could inspire and protect a community. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the alien mountains, Ilara and Kale sat quietly. "You've changed things here," she said softly. "Not just for yourself, but for all of us. You've shown them what it means to be human." Kale looked out at the horizon. "I survived alone," he said, voice calm. "But here, I see that humans are strongest together. That is something I have not known before." Ilara nodded. "Exactly. And together, we will face whatever comes next. You've earned recognition, Kale. But more importantly, you've earned understanding. And that is the first step toward respect." As the stars began to shine above Avaris Prime, the colony rested in a rare moment of peace. Kale's journey was far from over, but his presence had already reshaped the community. He had gone from feared outsider to valued protector, from savage to symbol of human potential. And somewhere deep within him, Kale understood that the path forward would require more courage, more intelligence, and more trust. But for the first time, he also understood that he was not alone. He had allies, a community, and someone who truly believed in him. Someone who had declared, without hesitation, that he was worth protecting. For Ilara, Kale's recognition was a triumph, not of rules or order, but of humanity itself. She smiled as she watched him in the fading light, knowing that his presence would continue to inspire, challenge, and uplift the colony. A new chapter was beginning not just for Kale, but for all humans in Avaris Prime. And in the quiet of the night, as the colony slept beneath alien stars, both teacher and student understood the truth. Humanity's strength lay not in fear, rules, or labels, but in courage, adaptability, and the bonds we forge with each other. The morning sun rose over Avaris Prime like a golden promise, but the light could not hide the tension that had spread through the colony. A sudden anomaly had appeared in the outer systems, affecting communication arrays, environmental controls, and even some nearby settlements. Panic buzzed quietly among the administrators and technicians. They had protocols, emergency procedures, and simulations, but nothing could prepare them for something entirely new, something unpredictable. Dr. Ilara Venn knew exactly who could help. She had watched Kale grow from a savage, living alone in the wild, into a human capable of extraordinary insight. His instincts, his intelligence, his ability to adapt, these were the qualities that the colony now needed more than ever. "Kale," she said urgently, pulling him aside in the command center. "Something is happening in the outer sectors. It's unlike anything the colony has faced before. The systems are failing in ways we don't understand." Kale's eyes narrowed, scanning the readouts on the display panels. "Patterns," he murmured, tilting his head as though listening to data rather than reading it. "Not random. There is a rhythm, a cause." Ilara nodded, impressed. "Exactly. That's why I brought you. You can see things we miss. You can understand what's going on." Without hesitation, Kale moved toward the control panels, touching screens, adjusting nodes, and running calculations with precision that left the technical staff speechless. While machines and trained humans had struggled to process the anomaly, Kale saw the cause immediately: a destabilized energy stream from a nearby star that was interfering with communication satellites and environmental regulators across multiple colonies. Ilara watched him work, heart pounding. "You can stabilize it?" she asked. Kale did not answer immediately. He considered the data, the shifting patterns, and the anomalies. Then, with quiet confidence, he began issuing precise adjustments to the control systems. His fingers moved like a conductor guiding an orchestra, aligning failing systems with natural rhythms that no simulation could predict. The first signals of success came as small beeps, satellite communications stabilized, environmental controls corrected themselves, and nearby settlements stopped reporting sudden malfunctions. The anomaly had not disappeared entirely, but Kale's interventions had contained it, preventing widespread disaster. One of the administrators, A tall alien with silver-tinted skin stepped forward, awe written on her face. "How is this possible?" she asked. "Even our most advanced systems could not respond this quickly." Alara smiled, placing a hand on Kale's shoulder. "Because this is human," she said softly. "Instinct, intelligence, adaptability. Kale doesn't just follow protocols. He understands patterns, predicts outcomes, and acts where others cannot. This is what humans are capable of." The hours that followed were intense. Kale remained at the control center, working tirelessly to stabilize systems across multiple sectors. Alara assisted him, but it was clear that his mind worked differently, faster, more intuitive, more aware of subtle variables that others overlooked. Slowly, the anomaly began to retreat. Systems normalized. Communications flowed again. And the colonies that had been at risk were safe. Finally, Kale stepped back, surveying the control panels. The crisis had been averted, thanks to his insight and decisive action. The command center was silent for a moment, then erupted into cheers. Administrators, engineers, and technicians clapped, hugged, and congratulated each other. But all eyes ultimately turned to the human who had made it possible. Kyle remained calm, almost indifferent to the praise. He had done what he needed to do, not for recognition, but because it was the right action. Yet for the colony, it was impossible to ignore what they had witnessed. Humans, even in their rawest, most untamed form, could rise to challenges that no technology alone could solve. Alara stepped forward, her voice loud enough to carry across the room. "Today, we have seen what humanity is truly capable of. Kale, who was once called a savage, has shown courage, intelligence, and adaptability beyond anything our systems could predict. This is what humans are. This is what humans can be." Whispers of awe swept through the room. Even those who had doubted Kale now looked at him with respect, if not admiration. For some, it was a lesson in humility. For others, it was an awakening to the untapped potential of their own species. That evening, the colony held a small ceremony to honor Kale and those who had assisted in stabilizing the sectors. He stood quietly beside Alara, observing the celebration with calm detachment. Children approached him cautiously, offering small gifts, drawings of stars, models of spaceships, and handcrafted tokens of appreciation. Kale accepted them with gentle nods, understanding the gesture without needing to speak. Alara watched him, her heart swelling with pride. "You've done more than save lives," she said quietly, leaning close. "You've inspired them. You've reminded them that humans are capable of greatness, not because of fear or control, but because of courage, intelligence, and adaptability." Kale looked at her, eyes steady. Then, in a rare moment of vulnerability, he said, "I understand. Humans can thrive. Together, stronger than alone." Alara smiled. "Exactly, and you've helped them see that. You've shown them the truth." The next days were filled with subtle changes. Colonists began consulting Kale for advice on resource management, construction, and problem-solving. He worked alongside engineers, technicians, and even children, teaching them methods he had learned from survival in the wild. His instincts, once considered untamed, became a guiding force for the colony. One afternoon, while walking through the market district, Kale noticed a small commotion. A transport vehicle had become stuck, blocking the flow of supplies. Without hesitation, he assessed the situation, directing helpers to shift weight, adjust speed, and reroute the vehicle using minimal effort. Within minutes, the transport was free, and the crowd around him murmured in surprise. Alara, who had been observing from nearby, whispered, "Every small action you take proves what I've been saying. Humans are adaptable. Humans are strong, and humans can inspire others just by being themselves." Kale nodded, understanding the lesson in practice. He did not seek praise, but he understood its meaning. Recognition was not his goal. It was the natural consequence of competence, courage, and care. Weeks later, the colony faced another challenge. a resource shortage in the agricultural sector due to unexpected weather fluctuations. Crops risked failure, and the colony's food stores were at stake. Once again, Cale's insight proved invaluable. Using his knowledge of natural patterns, combined with his understanding of the colony's systems, he devised a plan to redistribute resources, optimize irrigation, and protect crops from damage. The plan worked flawlessly. Not only did the colony avoid a crisis, but the harvest that followed was one of the most successful in recent memory. The humans and aliens of Avaris Prime began to see Cale not as a curiosity, not as a savage, but as a true leader, someone who combined instinct with intellect, courage with compassion. One evening, Ilara and Cale stood together on a high balcony overlooking the colony. The lights below shimmered like a constellation, and the stars above mirrored their brilliance. "You've changed everything here," Ilara said softly. "Not just with your actions, but with what you've shown them about humanity. You've proven that fear and labels are meaningless. What matters is courage, intelligence, and trust. That is what makes humans remarkable." Cale gazed at the lights, silent for a moment. Then he spoke quietly. "I understand. Humans are not weak. We survive. We adapt. We protect. Together. Stronger." Ilara smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "And that is exactly why I protected you from the beginning. I saw your worth, even when others could not. I knew you could show them and me what humans truly are." The Menton, Cale looked at her, his expression softening. He had learned to trust, to rely on others, and to understand the strength that came from connection. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel that he belonged not just to a colony, but to a larger human story. In the following months, Cale's influence continued to grow. Colonists adopted his methods, learning to observe, adapt, and act with awareness. Children practiced his lessons in patience and attention. Engineers and technicians consulted him on complex problems, and whenever a challenge arose, Cale was ready not because of training alone, but because of instinct, insight, and humanity. The final test came unexpectedly. A severe solar flare threatened the entire sector, capable of disabling communications, power, and environmental controls across multiple colonies. Panic spread quickly, but Cale remained calm. He coordinated emergency protocols, using his instinctive understanding to anticipate failures before they occurred. Ilara worked alongside him, translating his insights into coordinated action. Together, they managed to protect the colony and nearby settlements, stabilizing systems faster than any protocol could have predicted. By the time the flare subsided, no lives were lost, and the damage was minimal. The colony erupted in celebration. Cale had not only survived, adapted, and earned recognition, he had become a symbol of what humans were capable of at their best. Courage, intelligence, adaptability, and compassion had triumphed. That night, Ilara and Cale stood quietly on the balcony. "You've done it, Cale," she said softly. "You've shown them. You've shown me. Humans are capable of incredible things." Cale looked at the stars, then at the colony below. "I see it now. Humans are strong. Not just one, but together. That is power." Ilara smiled, knowing that his journey, though far from over, had reached a milestone. Humanity had triumphed not through rules, fear, or force, but through courage, intelligence, and connection. And as the stars shone brightly over Avaris Prime, Cale, once called a savage, now stood as a beacon of hope and proof that humans, even at their rawest, most untamed, most instinctive, could rise to meet any challenge and succeed.